Hello guys, how are you? Are we or are we? Okay, hold on a second. Yes. Okay guys, welcome everybody to today's class. We're gonna keep on talking about business cycles, and the thing is that we're going to focus on the difference between recession and depression, okay? We mentioned it. Let me recapitulate a little bit. The only thing is that I can't see you guys. Hold on, let me see if I can open it here, my own life. Hold on a second. Oh, okay. My channel. Here. My videos. Economic cycle. Life. Perfect. Hi guys. Hi. Okay, perfect. So I have you in the chat here because I can't see you, and then I'm looking at you right now. So guys, welcome to this new week, and we're going to start this class today. We were looking before that, well, we have something that is called the economic cycle, the business cycle, and it's like this kind of like snake based on the GDP. We've already seen what's the GDP, the gross domestic product, what it measures, what it does not include: informal economy, transaction costs, and the intermediate goods. We have seen that we have to use in all these graphs the real GDP and not the nominal GDP, because the real GDP calculates and takes out a lot of things that then otherwise the GDP will be replicated or exaggerated. All right, so we use the real GDP in all our graphs, and that's going to give us a better result in all our calculations. All right. Yeah. Okay, thank you, David. I'm gonna try that next time. But yeah, it was like I'm still like trying out a lot of stuff, but I think I'm getting there. I'm getting there for my mix and my match. So I gave up the chroma key, as you can see. So I put like a blue curtain so that it looks a little bit better. And so let's improve with the time and with the classes so that you can have a good quality. And you know, we're trying so hard, so bear with us, okay? And whatever suggestions that you have, yeah, please let me know so that we can make this a little bit better. All right, so we were looking at the business cycle and we were seeing that it's like a roller coaster, okay? And that we are actually causing the business cycles. We are causing the peaks and we're causing the troughs. Okay, why? Because of the law of supply and demand. Remember, and that's the only thing I'm going to say from previous classes, that economics is the science of decisions. And in that way, since it's the science of decisions, it's a social science. And it's practically impossible to forecast all the decisions and how people are going to behave in the future. We can make projections. And sometimes those projections, those speculations, are the most dangerous things for economists. Economists fear dreadfully speculations. Speculations is like an educated guess, a intuitive guess of the people that are trying to make better in terms of economy. A lot of people open these 2020, they open restaurants, they open their businesses, they even incremented production, they hire people, They hire people. Even right now, even when the pandemic is still going on, I know some people that have are being hired because of these new uses and these new technologies. So Google Suite is hiring people, and a lot of agencies that work for Google Suite are hiring people. And that tells you about a planning, a projection. But what happens if this ends? What happens if this just doesn't work anymore? Well, all these people are going to be laid off. You know, we can foresee, we can forecast some of the stuff. We can speculate some of the indicators, but we cannot expect to calculate everything and to make these calculations really accurate. It's like the earthquakes, or it's like when we try to calculate your heartbeat. You have to have a sustained and a maintained symptom so that you can say that it's a heart attack, or it was only un sustito, that we call it like that. So that exactly happens when we apply it to economic terms. We have this business cycle that if you graph it, it's gonna look like an electrocardiogram. You know, it has peaks, it goes like this all the time, like a sound wave in your Adobe Audition program. You know, it goes like this, it goes up and down with pronounced peaks and pronounced troughs. And that's how the economic cycle would look like if you graph it with the information. You connect all the dots. Now, based on that information, economists make up formulas and functions so that we can forecast how the cycle is going to behave. When we have a curve, we're like putting together, we're like blending this information, and it doesn't look like peaks anymore. It looks like a wave, all right? So now we have the three main parts of the business cycle. That was the expansion, the peak, and then the decline, or the decline, and we have the trough. Okay, then what happens after the trough? That the cycle starts again. It starts recuperating, expansion, peak, and then again recession, contraction, and a trough. Okay, that's why it's called a business cycle. Now, most of the economies have the curve, and even though it has ups and downs, we can observe that the curve goes upward. Even though it goes up and down, it goes upward. It's like when we say in Spanish, 5 pasos para adelante y 3 pasos para atrás. You know, even though if you go back and forth, you're still advancing. Okay, if you go forward 5 steps and then backward 3 steps, you have still a +2 steps. So you're gonna observe that in most countries, in most nations, the gross domestic product, when you graph it and you calculate the function and you draw the curve, that is gonna look like a roller coaster, like a snake with peaks and troughs, you're gonna see that even though it has ups and downs, you're gonna see it going in an upward direction. Now, that may be based on a real increment on production, a real growth in the economy, or on the contrary, it may only be reflecting the population growth. The segment of that actively working people that are growing. Okay, we have more people working than people consuming in the phases of dependency on adults. Okay, so maybe that may be many factors, but again, let me just point out that in terms of economics, we cannot say an accurate sentence. We cannot just conclude something just by saying it, and we have to keep in mind that economics is the science of decisions, and we're based on the individual decisions, and that's at the base, at the very bottom of everybody's decisions, individual decisions, is free will. So we cannot foresee exactly, not even with all the formulas, not even with all the statistical analysis and projections, we cannot say accurately how people are going to react. And we may say, on the contrary, that we are probably causing the peaks and the troughs, the expansions and the contractions, and the recessions and the real growth that in the GDP we can see it. Okay, so let's talk about the recession. Now, we saw in our graphs previously that when we have a trough, it may only be a downside. It may only be like a down lump, okay? But when it's prolonged by 2 trimesters, that means 6 months, we can be speaking of a recession, okay? So today's class topic is recession versus depression. Why cannot we say if this pandemic, COVID-19, is going to turn this little downslope into a recession or in the future to a depression? We can't say that because it all depends on how people are reacting and acting with the situation. All right, so let's define first what is a recession. A recession is a period of economic contraction. People stop spending money. All that nonsense of the president about his shoes, that if you have a pair of shoes, that's enough and you shouldn't buy anymore. Well, let me tell you that that's the worst thing we can do to economy. It's always an equilibrium. If I have the money and I have the need, I'm perceiving money and I have a need, then I exchange, I consume, I buy, I sell, I am producing. If I keep economically active, then the economy is not going to contract. Now, if I engage in a policy for my household or for a business of limiting my needs, limiting my expenses, then the economy is contracting. Okay, now for some businesses it's okay to have a period of austerity so that we can make ends meet. But in other situations, it may be suicide. It may be totally suicide. So you have to keep that in mind, that not always austerity is the best thing to save up. Some people don't save up in an account, and which makes money circulate and still effective and being cash. But people save up just by putting things in an envelope and putting it in the bottom of our mattress. And that means that we are taking out cash of the circulant economy. And if everybody starts doing that, if everybody stops paying their debts, if everybody stops returning money to the banks, then guess what? The interests are going to go up, then employment is going to go down, unemployment is going to go up, employment is going to go down, etc. People are not going to invest anymore because they start perceiving that the situation is not very bright and it's not very good. Like people with the pandemic stopped hiring. A lot of places just closed, and so people were laid off. They are still hired when things reopen, but they haven't been perceiving any salary. So, I mean, we have a lot of things that we have to take into account because economy is based on individual decisions, and we don't know, we can't foresee, we can't guess exactly how people are going to react to all these factors, all right? So, let's write this, please. And now, characteristics of a recession journal include significant declines in decline, that means like a diminishing amount of industrial production. Okay, if I was making 100,000 pairs of shoes, then now I'm only gonna make 80,000 because people are not buying, people are not going out. I still have a lot of things in the stock, so machines, please go turn off. International trade. Obviously, right now with all these things about boundaries and merchandise being retained in some points, even at the ocean, well, we have a diminishing international trade and a diminishing incoming of products from abroad, and that is going to hit the economy. Obviously, we do not have statistics yet. That's impossible. We may be processing the ones in March when everything started, but it's impossible when they show statistics like everywhere. Don't even believe that. It's too soon to have real data or what's it called, like proven data, realistic and trustable data, okay? International trade, employment, as we just mentioned, people are being laid off. Household income and spending, everybody is trying to contract, to be very austere in these times of crisis, okay? But we don't know if this is only going to be a crisis, if it's going to bring on a recession, or if it's going to hit a recession. Investments, construction, stock market values, etc. Right? So that's a recession. When this is prolonged by 2 trimesters, that is 6 months, then we are talking about a recession and not only a down slump in our business cycle. Okay? There aren't exact declines which trigger universal agreement that an economy is in recession. I mean, you're gonna find many authors, don't write this that I'm reading, okay? Economists debate whether an economy is in recession well into one, but some analysts do use one conventional benchmark, 2 consecutive quarters of decline in a country's gross domestic product, what I just said, okay? How do we know? Well, you have 2 trimesters, okay? So now, let me go forward. Okay, now let's go to the other one, all right? What is a depression? Compared to a recession, a depression is much more severe and sustained. A depression is a period during which business, employment, stock market values decline severely or remain at a very low level of activity. It's like a stagnation. Everything seems to be stopping. It has to be logically longer than a recession. Gives some characteristics right now: production, employment, consumption, trade, investment, income, everything, all the factors that we just mentioned in the recession explanation. All these aspects of the economy are reduced sharply and widely, often across the entire globe. A recession can be global in a scale, but it can also restrict the economies of the smaller regions or just individual countries. Right? Now, just as we said that recession may be for when you have a maintaining contraction of the economy for 2 trimesters, we have a recession. Now, we're going to see how long does it take to be considered a depression. We do not know how things are going to be developing, and we don't know for sure how long they're going to last. So that's why we cannot foresee with accuracy if we're only talking about a crisis, a focal crisis. That means that it's only happening to this company, it's only happening to this region, it's only happening to this country, or we're talking about something that is global or something that is going to be prolonged, that is going to last much more. Okay, so we can just say that a recession is a period of contraction that is maintained over 2 trimesters. A depression is a contraction that has endured for more than that. Okay, we're gonna see how long. Usually, we're gonna measure the GDP. Okay, let's look at that. Remember that at any time that you haven't gotten to copy everything that is on the screen, I'm going to put up the PDF in Moodle as we go. So this afternoon you already have this presentation so that you can complete your notes. Remember that one of the activities that I'm going to ask you for credit is to upload the pictures of all your notes with obviously your own handwriting that I still remember. Okay, so there's the magic number for when an economy is in a depression and it stops being in a recession. Okay, we know exactly when it goes out of a crisis and starts being a recession, two trimesters. Okay, but when we are not in a recession and we start being categorized as a depression, well, there's no definition. You're going to find many authors. However, the global universe has agreed that if you have over a 10% decline in GDP, we're talking about a depression. Okay, when you talk about depression, immediately comes to mind the 1930s United States depression, but there have been many more. Okay, the one that we saw last semester in history about Germany after the First World War, that is obviously a very greater depression than the one in the United States. All right, so we can say about three things. Over 10% decline, that means that when you go to the CIA World Factbook page or whatever statistical database that gives you these numbers and you look for the real GDP growth index, then you're gonna find a negative number. If you have a minus 10 point something, we're talking about a depression, okay? To get to that point, we have already passed and way past the recession. Around 20% of unemployment. We have about 4.6 something according to the CIA World Factbook and 2017 last update. We're very far from a depression. We have been very far from a depression since very early in the 20th century. So we are an stable economy. We can't stop recessions to be here. To come and go, can't stop them. What the government can do, and they fail to do, is to engage in programs and policymakers don't do their job well because they can diminish the impact on real lives and individual economies by providing many programs and many support, subsidies, to foster the economic growth, to not slow it down. If it's going to slow down, but that it doesn't slow down that much, you can give incentives to people, you know. When I was in Peru, I commented to you many times that when we were in class, in real class, that I watched, it was awful, this documentary in Netflix about the life of Donald Trump. I was intrigued, and the documentary is very well done, but it's very boring. So I fell asleep in every single episode. But that documentary let me have many examples of how Donald Trump has been making his business. He, as I told you before, he built the Trump Tower in New York City, and when he was building that tower, he told the mayor of New York City that he wanted an exemption in taxes for a 4%. And we're talking about a construction that should have paid millions and millions and millions of US dollars. So he forced onto the mayor of New York City so that he would be exempted from that tax in exchange of all the jobs that he was going to create for the people of New York. At the end, he got his way, like always, he got his way. And that's around the time that he said that he was not interested in politics, but at any event, he was considering running for president of the United States only if the country needed him. And guess what? He considered that the United States needed him. 4 years, 5, 6 years ago. So imagine. Anyways, okay, so around 20% of unemployment. For that, the government should provide incentives to foreign companies, to foreign investors, so that they can come, build here, manufacture here, produce here, assemble here, so that people in Mexico have jobs. Okay, and finally, a downturn lasts more than 1 to 2 years. So when a recession is prolonged for 2 years, we have a depression. Yes, so definitely under these standards, the German crisis during the 1920s was totally considered a depression. Okay. Okay, no comments. You know that at any point you can do whatever requests and you can ask me anything that you need to know, all right? So now we're gonna see the Great Recession versus the Great Depression. Don't write this, okay? We have only written, let me recapitulate, the definition of a recession, okay? Peak versus trough, is the peak. The peak is the highest point in the roller coaster of the business cycle, and the trough is like a valley. You're also gonna find that term, a valley, okay, the lowest point in the curve. And let me see. Well, now we're going to write what causes a recession, okay? What causes that? Well, we can say that high inflation in the prices, that goes directly related to the demand and the supply curves and all the factors that we have already seen. What changes demand, what changes supply, what increases quantity demanded, what decreases quantity supply. Well, scarcity is going to play a very important role in this. Okay, I have already talked to you about that, the Lopez Portillo crisis. One of the things that triggered that recession, that almost turned into a depression, was precisely his unwillingness to set the prices and to fix the prices of one of the things that the country was relying on the most, which was petroleum. So oil. The Arabian countries that are producers of petroleum and oil, they started overproducing. And so, by the laws of demand and supply, well, overproduction gives you a reduction in price. All right? So if we have a super abundant quantity of whatever good, then the prices are going to go down because prices are directly related to a scarcity. The more scarce something is, like diamonds, the more valuable. The less scarce, like water, higher the value that thing in concrete has. All right. So under that logic, during that crisis, these Arabian countries, the Emirates, started overproducing something. They lowered the prices, and Mexico just refused, under the direction of Lopez Portillo, to reduce the prices of Mexico for oil. And guess what? People stopped buying. We didn't have income anymore on that category, and well, we had one of the greatest recessions of the 20th century, right, for Mexico. So high inflation, that brings that all the prices just go up like crazy. Okay, high interest rates. People know, as I just said, people are not returning money. They're not returning loans. They're not paying their credits, their monthly payments for supermarket, Costco, Sam's, Fábricas de Francia, Liverpool, whatever store that gave you credit, that people are not paying their debts. And that is going to cause overproduction. Why? Why overproduction? Not because precisely producers are incrementing their output or the machines are going full vapor, but because people are not buying that much. So the quantity demanded lowers, and that makes a surplus of something, and that may be considered an overproduction because I'm producing over the quantity, the equilibrium, the quantity that is demanded. All right, and we're gonna have that curve over the equilibrium point, and it's going to be colored, and that is going to be a surplus. That is a lot of product that stays there that nobody wants to buy, that it represents a loss for the provider, for the producer. Okay, now asset bubbles, we're going to explain that next class with more detail, speculations and bubbles, because these are economic terms that are very, very important for you to know. That's going to make you understand a lot of the things. And bubbles, just as a preview, as a spoiler, it has to do with speculations. Okay, people start perceiving that the economy is growing, let's say in that period of time of expansion within the economic cycle. So people are perceiving, they know economy is growing, and they start investing. They loan money, they get loans, they invest, they start constructing, they start building, they start hiring, they start blah, blah, blah. Okay, and so that makes a bubble, that creates a bubble. And that is unsustainable. Okay, it's what happened to Venezuela. Venezuela was giving loans, was supporting their people with a lot of welfare programs, and that's unsustainable. Same thing did Lopez Portillo. Lopez Portillo started just lending money, like borrowing money from these international banks so that he could build more refineries for the oil, that Mexico is rich in oil, but it's not good if you just have it under the soil and you cannot extract it. And those extraction machines, thingies, cost billions and billions and billions of dollars. So he starts borrowing money, and then that is going to lead him to build something else and to build something else, and he hasn't been paid off by the utilities of that first thing that he's engaging into, and so he starts making this debt bigger and bigger and bigger, and we're still paying for that. All right, overextended credit and high debt. That's what I just said. Like one thing leads to the other and to the other and to the other. If the bank perceives that people are not paying their debts, then they're gonna raise the interest rate. It's not like they're not missionaries of charity. They're not Mother Teresa, so that they can start helping people out and just like being good to people just for their pretty face. Businesses are there, banks are there to make money. They're lucrative, they're for-profit organizations. All right? The only people that work with no profit, a profit goal, are non-profit organizations, and non-profit organizations are like religious organizations or NGOs or these big associations that do not make utilities. They only give a service, and in exchange of that service they receive something, but it's only to maintain the organism and the structure, but it's not like for utility purposes. Okay? Bank runs and lack of consumer confidence. Consumers start perceiving it's all connected. It's like a snowball. People perceive that the banks are not a good option anymore. People go withdraw their money. You take money off the market, is what we just explained. There is no cash anymore, no circulating money anymore, and that gives you a contraction of the economy. And well, that gives you higher prices because the exchange rates are due to the demand and supply curve. They're interrelated and interconnected, and you cannot have one without the other. It's a consequence after consequence after consequence. And finally, a trade war. People in contraction, they're gonna be very defensive. Any country would do that. Nobody can blame anybody for being defensive. If you know that your economy is contracting, you are in a recession, you're barely making meets end, then obviously you're not going to be very concerned about helping your neighbor countries so that they can also develop and attain their goals for the year. You're concerned about your people and your growth and your interests. So things get very feisty and they get very competitive more than ever. And so everybody's looking for their own interests, and if you have to screw people up, well, you screw people up because you are fighting for your survival of your business, survival of your economy, survival of just the sources of the next generation's incoming salaries and assets. All right? Alrighty then. So we saw then what is a recession, and I think, no, that's it. Yeah, that's it, guys. Well, it gives you a little, some examples. We have downturns in the United States economy. Right now we are at a 4-6%. We saw last time that this year's projection, educated guess, is of minus 3%. So we're contracting. Hopefully it doesn't last, but who does it depend on? It depends on the consumers. It depends on people, individual people. And the only task of the government is to promote this growth, to promote the growth, to promote spending, to promote investment, that the economy doesn't stop. So the worst thing that AMLO can be saying right now is that if you have a pair of shoes, please don't buy any more because that's enough. I mean, we need to buy shoes, we need to buy many things, and we need to keep the economy being active. Because in the very first moment that you don't have something active, then that's gonna trigger the recession. Okay, so it's very convenient for us to go back to normality as soon as possible and to keep economic activities online or economic activities in delivery packages still going. If we still are perceiving money, we need to make it circulate. Not as spending like dumbly or well, without any sense. I mean, we need to make all the time, not only in recession times or crisis times, we need to make educated and intelligent buys and intelligent decisions. I mean, not because you have like the money of the world, you're gonna spend all the money here and then. But in crisis, in times of crisis or in times of recession, with a little more care, right? So, yep, that's it. I don't know if you have any questions for today about the graphs, about anything. I'm gonna put these in a PowerPoint, in a PDF presentation, and I'm gonna upload it to Moodle so that you can have this class, you can have the information, and you can complete your notes. Alrighty? Any questions, guys? Or everything clear as mud? If there are no questions, this is it for today, guys. And we'll see you, I believe, I'll see you on Thursday for our next class. And thank you for your homeworks. I have almost 100% of you in my Moodle. And that's it. Well, have a nice one, guys, and be good always. Okay? Bye-bye. Let me see. Bye, guys.